Welcome back to the High Performance Zone. Today I have Jeff Blumenfeld. He is a fellow at the Explorers Club, and we dive into some of these real explorations, but more importantly, not just going to Antarctica and Iceland and these really crazy things, but how do you get sponsorship? How do you actually have a dream come true and have somebody else finance this dream? He does this for a living, but the real meat of this podcast is about volunteerism, and that is traveling with purpose. In fact, that is Jeff's new book, Travel with Purpose, and it's about volunteering while you travel, and not just the big things like helping to cure blindness in Himalaya. I get that, right? It's also about little things like getting off a cruise ship and helping in the Humane Society, but how you can bring purpose into your travel. That to me is the biggest takeaway. Let's dive in. There's some good stories here. Enjoy this. Ready? Hit it. Hey, Jeff, welcome to the High Performance Zone. I am so excited because you are a fellow at the Explorers Club, and I want to dive into some of those experiences. But first off, where are you coming from today?
Where we're coming from? Oh, I'm with my dad in Key Largo. You know, parents don't last that long, so you want to spend as much time as you can with him. He's 94 and he's doing pretty well. So we're down here in Key Largo today.
I like your shirt, and I can tell.
Very appropriate for the tropics.
Yeah, and for those who are just listening, and also for some adaptive people who we have who don't have the eyesight, I just want to describe myself. So, Jeff, I'm bald. I'm a white male. I'm wearing my Glad to Be Here t-shirt. I'm so excited to be with you. Tell me, how do you describe yourself right now?
Well, I'm gray-haired old white dude in a Hawaiian shirt, which makes me look, well, maybe 1 or 2 years younger.
Perfect. Hey, I really like that something that I'm so proud of you when we talk about volunteerism and the books that you have written. But, you put priorities of being with your parents. And I think that is so important. And I've seen you do that all around the world in very powerful things, whether it's helping people get their eyesight back in Nepal, whether it's going to Antarctica and helping kids learn about some of the real treasures down there. But just give me a little background. What got you so involved in exploring the world?
Well, there's an open-ended question, but I was born in New York, grew up in the Catskills in the Borscht Belt, about 90 miles northwest of New York City. I like to tell people that I work closely with some of the old Borscht Belt comedians, Milton Berle and Don Rickles. We work closely together. Well, he was up on stage. He was, this was in the late 60s. He was up on stage and I was serving club soda to little old ladies in the back row of the nightclub. But we worked in the same room together. And I got to hear all their jokes endlessly, Milton Berle and Shecky Green and some of the old great classics. And then I went to Syracuse, where I really focused on journalism. And I went to the Newhouse School at Syracuse University. I was on the radio station. I wrote for the newspapers. I wrote magazine stories, and I loved being part of the world of other people, that I could just visit them just for a short amount of time and learn about their lives and learn about their world. And to this day, I'm still a writer and still a journalist. But back then, when I started in high school,
hold on. Let me jump real quick. I don't want to go the whole journey line yet. I want to dive right into a super cool story. So you are a journalist. I know you work for the Ski History Foundation. You're the vice president, I think, right? And give me a story of somebody who you had the rare privilege of getting to know, whether they were an explorer or something like that, that still impacts your life today.
I've done lots of interviews with famous people, but my most memorable one was with Rod Serling. He was my hero. I grew up watching The Twilight Zone. He was speaking in Cornell University. I was just a young kid who came down from Syracuse, drove down to Cornell, interviewed him before he went up on stage. This is my hero. Wow. I grew up on Twilight Zones, and I got to meet Rod Serling. I got to interview him. I wrote the story up. It was the cover story of the Syracuse New Times. not the New York Times, but the Syracuse New Times, no matter. I took his photograph, it appeared on the cover. I wrote the story about Rod Serling. I sent him the story. He sent me back a nice note, and it's hanging up on my wall today. And it's one of my most memorable interviews.
Is he like he is on TV? I mean, is that in person? Does he have that presence?
Small. Well, first of all, he's small, short, wiry, dark, black hair, lot of hair on his head, and reeked of cigarettes. And the cigarettes is probably what killed him at the age of 50. He was born in 1925, died in 75. He did smell of cigarettes because every scene you see him on camera.
You know, you rehash my memory. You know, he's smoking, he's got that raspy voice. Oh, but now we know it probably killed him. So, you know, that probably wasn't the smartest thing. Hey, let's go to an adventure. The one that you and I, by the way, thank you for being in Sun Valley these last couple of weeks. You and I got a chance to spend some time together and actually ski together. And I remember being on the chair and just really being enthralled with some of your stories. That's why I wanted other people to hear this. What is an Explorer Club? What does that really mean? And how did you get involved in the Explorers Club? And what are you doing right now?
Yeah, well, I had a marketing company, and I still have a marketing company in public relations. And I was representing the DuPont company, and DuPont said to me, "We got this guy, keeps bugging us. It's 1985 now, and he wants to go to the North Pole." And I'm thinking to myself, why don't you just fly there? And they go, no, no, no. He wants to be the first confirmed dog sled expedition to the North Pole. And I said, well, didn't Perry get to the North Pole in 1909? Or maybe it was Cook. And they said, well, that was never really proven that Perry actually got to the North Pole. Today, it's generally recognized that he got to the North Pole. But then there's the Cook Society that says Frederick Cook actually got to the North Pole before Perry. Anyway, so it was controversial. So this gentleman from Ely, Minnesota, small, wiry guy named Will Steger, kept pitching the DuPont company because he wanted to do a dog sled expedition to the North Pole.
Why DuPont? Why DuPont?
Because he wanted sponsorship.
Right. Okay, got it.
These expeditions don't happen without money. So you either pay for it yourself, go deep in debt, put your remortgage your house to follow your dream, or you try and get sponsorship. So he went to DuPont because he wanted to use their sleeping bag insulation, the insulation they make for parkas. He wanted to use the Z-Pel for stain resistance.
Okay.
So he went to them and he did get sponsorship. But I was the guy sent to make sure DuPont got their money's worth. And they did. Because in 1986, Will Steger and his teammates did the first confirmed dog sled expedition to the North Pole. We're not sure if Perry made it. We're not sure if Cook made it. But Will Steger first confirmed dog sled expedition to the North Pole, unsupplied.
Okay, we got to unpack this. First off, so DuPont hired you. You're actually working for DuPont?
They were a client of mine.
Client, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
It brings me with the mind of technology. You mentioned to me that how technology has really, how it's being used in exploring, and maybe this is an example. How did you confirm that he made it to the North Pole?
Well, at that point, I do believe we had GPS, an early form of GPS, but you know what? They also brought a sextant. And if you know anything about from the Navy.
Oh, I do.
Anything about sextants, you just don't pick the thing up and find your position. It's pretty involved. And I think it has to be at noon. You have to take a sunshot at noon. I tried to learn, and they gave me a giant manual and a video to try and learn how to use a sextant. And I have one, but I had to give it up.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that. So it brings me back to Naval Academy. Now I graduated in 82. So I'm taking a course in like 81, and it's called Celestial Navigation.
Exactly.
Yeah, it wasn't just sector, but it's stars and nights. And I'm thinking, wow, this is cool. This is how Columbus, this is how all the explorers figured things out. And I'm realizing first off, it's a super pain in the ass because you need all those books, right? You need the books so you can reference where the stars are and what they're moving. But I got to tell you, at that point we had GPS, and I'm thinking to myself, why the hell are we spending time learning how to shoot a sextant? And it was, by the way, it was nostalgic, but it was a total waste of time. But
well, hang on now.
go for it.
I know that you also probably had to learn Morse code. And I
Yes,
happen to be,
and I noticed, and you're an expert on Morse code,
I
right?
happen to be fluent and glad to be here. Da da dit da 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 dit da 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 dit. That's glad. Two, da 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 da. B, da 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 dit dit. B, and here did it dit dit da da dit dit. That's glad to be here. You have to be fluent in Morse code. You don't
That's the
need
best
Morse
glad to
code.
be here I've heard in a long time. That's awesome, Jeff.
You don't have to be fluent in Morse code anymore.
Right.
Some of us keep it up just because we can.
Well, you know what was amazing? I love that you mentioned that, because I remember Morse code, and then there's this semaphore. What is the flags on Navy ships? I think it's
Semaphore.
Yeah, semaphore. You learn how to read those. But I really think about where it came into work was, the POWs who got shot down in Vietnam had to come up with a tapping routine. Now, they couldn't use just Morse code because then the enemy would know what it was too. But this idea of communicating in different ways, right, I think is critical. And let's go back to real quick to that story though. So I'm involved. I mean, this guy's trying to go to the North Pole, and
Right.
and tell me how did he do it? How many dogs did he have? How many sleds? How many, was it just him? I mean, what?
No, it was him and a team of about 5 or 6 others, and a woman actually. And she became the first woman to reach the North Pole over land. Anne Bancroft, and she's still a major explorer to this day. His other partner was Paul Schurke, also from Ely, Minnesota. Paul runs tourist trips to the North Pole. When I say tourist trips, it's still pretty rough.
Yeah,
You still have to be in good shape, and it's still pretty cold up there. It's not glamping. And he had a few other members of his team. He did reach the North Pole, and then he was flown out. It's interesting. In Perry's day, when a dog on a trip like that would die, they would feed the dog to the other dogs.
Right. Sure.
They would shoot the dog and feed the dog. Well, Will decided that wasn't very politically correct, and this was before the term political correctness came into being. So he did fly the dogs out.
Wow.
Rather than.
I got to tell you, there's a lot of dog lovers probably listening to this. I know my wife, Carol, was very glad to hear that we flew the dogs out.
Flew the dogs out. But what I learned was the worst thing you could do to a sled dog is leave them behind. When you're setting off on your expedition and you have a team of sled dogs, the worst thing you could do is not take them with you. And I've seen those dogs just straining at their leads to start running. And it's an amazing thing to see. They are really the workhorses of the Arctic. And there are stories of exploration of the South Pole where Robert F. Scott used mechanical machinery. And I think he also brought horses with him, and Amundsen said, no, we got to use dogs. That's the way the Inuit did it. That's the way the natives did it. In the North, that's how we're going to do it in the South. And Amundsen did succeed. So in terms of stories, being part of Will Steger's expedition, which is an historic expedition to this day, is something that will always stay with me. We went to his training base in Yellowknife in the Northwest Territories. I got to see the Northern Lights. I got to see the Northern Lights for 4 straight days. It's like, what do you want to do tonight? You want to stay in the bar? You want to go out and see the Northern Lights? And it was like, no, we saw them yesterday. It was like people travel thousands of miles to see the Northern Lights, and there they were. You can read a newspaper.
I got a story real quick. Let me add to that. So Carol and I flew up to Finland to go see the Northern Lights. I think I was given a speech in Stockholm and we decided we want to see the Northern Lights. And it's one of these beautiful resort things where it's like an igloo, but you've got, you're in a bed and you can look up and see the lights and it's really comfortable. Problem is it was cloudy the 3 days we were there. So I never got to see them. So we sometimes take it for granted how special that was, right?
I know people that are spending $3,000 a person to fly to Austin to see the 2024 eclipse. And I'm thinking to myself, you're going to Austin to see the eclipse? It could rain that day. Why, that's what happens, man.
Hey, so you were actually on the trip? Did you actually
No,
go?
no. I worked on I'm not trained for that. I'm the writer, I'm the photographer.
Got it.
I'm the guy who communicates it, helps them find sponsorship. And I write about it, not to put in a plug in here, but my first book was called You Want to Know, what's it called? You Want to Go Where? That was rebranded. It's now called Get Sponsored, which you can see on Amazon. So I write about it in the book. And it's
let's talk about that.
adventures.
That trip, I think, created that idea for the book, right? Is you mentioned this earlier. People have these dreams. They want to do these incredible things, but without sponsorship, it just doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. Look, Christopher Columbus tried 3 times to get sponsorship. He went to Queen Isabella, not once, twice, but 3 times, and says, I'll guarantee, great riches for you if you sponsor my trip to the New World. And finally, she relented, and he scored. He went to the New World.
What do you think? I don't know if you know this, but why? What did he do the 3rd time that changed her mind?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
I wonder.
It could be a legend too. But
no, I've read that. I've heard that he was constantly going back to
going to get funding.
Yeah.
And he promised her great riches. And he finally got the funding to go on his trip, and he went there. Regardless of what you think about Columbus today, and certainly, revisionist history says that he wasn't this great guy that everybody puts him up to, but he did arguably do he opened up the New World before anybody else did. And another friend of mine from the Explorers Club, he calls me up one day because he's looking for more sponsorship. And he says, Jeff, he's so excited. I found it. I need your help to get more sponsorship. I go, well, what'd you find? And he gives me 2 words. When he gives me those 2 words, my hand starts to shake. He says, I found it. I said, what did you find? He goes, the Santa Maria. I found Columbus's flagship off the coast of Haiti, exactly where it was supposed to be. I read Columbus's diary. I went to that spot and I found Columbus's flagship, the Santa Maria. Now, it's not sitting there like it's in, you ever see an aquarium and there's a skeleton driving a big, wheel at the back of it. It's not like that. It's commingled. It's a wreck where other wrecks, because it was a sandy area, there are other wrecks that have fell on top of the Santa Maria. So it's all commingled. So it was really circumstantial evidence. There's no bell that says Santa Maria. There's no sternboard. Sternboard is the back of the ship. Many of you know that the Endurance was found, Shackleton's ship, and there's no question about what they found because it said Endurance. That's pretty good evidence. In the case of Columbus, there's nothing that says Santa Maria. So it's a bunch of circumstantial evidence. He's looking for permission and funding to go back to Haiti, but of course Haiti is a troubled little nation there.
Isn't there a challenge? Tell me about when you find treasure. Does it belong to the state or the country?
It would basically belong to Haiti, but once it gets in the hands of, not to be dismissive about a country, an entire country and its people, but there's a lot of corruption there. And he's worried that the site might get looted.
Right.
Or it could be.
Who's that found it? Is this our buddy from Cape Cod?
Yeah. Barry Clifford.
Barry. So, and tell everybody that Barry not only found the Santa Maria, but what was his first find right off Cape Cod?
First authenticated pirate ship ever found in North America. It was called the Whydah, Whydah. And in that case, he knew he found the Whydah because he found the bell. And if you
Yes.
go online and you Google Whydah bell, there it is. He found it. It says Whydah on the bell, which is no easy thing to do. I mean, this is cast iron. No, it's not iron. It's probably some blend of copper and iron and steel. I'm not sure, but there it is. It's engraved right on the bell. It says
Well, he
Whydah.
also found, and I've been to the museum, the treasure, right? I mean, he's got coins. It was a pirate ship, and they had raided some other ships. It's anybody who's listening, if you're out in Cape Cod, go to, what's the museum called? Do you have any idea?
I think it's discoverpirates.com.
Okay.
And it's the Pirate Museum.
Yeah.
And it is in not Provincetown, before you get to Provincetown. It's possibly Yarmouth.
Yeah.
But
no, I've been there. You've been there. It's amazing. Okay, let's get back to.
I know we're going all over the place here. That's
I know.
what exploration's like.
This is what I like, man. You got to be flying, right? I mean, we got different bogeys coming at us.
We're like on a Blue Angel right now of exploration. So 1986, North Pole. Will Steger goes to North Pole. Yep. And then he's a smart guy. He knew that when he got back from the North Pole, the first question reporters will ask him, they'll say to him, Will, you've been to the North Pole. What's next for you? He had an answer. He had it ready. He had it right in his hip pocket. He says, I want to cross Antarctica. He wants to cross, and he announced that he would cross Antarctica with an international team this time. Crossing Antarctica, many people take a little pie shape and they go from the coast to the South Pole. That's not what he wanted to do. He wanted to go from the furthest tip to the furthest tip, from the Antarctic Peninsula, clear across to the other side of the continent, and he did it. 3,700 miles with his team. It was 7 months. In that case, it was by dog sled, and he crossed Antarctica. And to tell you the impact that he had, that was 1989-90. Just last year, a documentary came out called After Antarctica, and it's terrific. If you look at that online, you can look up the documentary about Will Steger's expedition, about his entire life, really. And when he came to Boulder, which is where I live, to speak at the Boulder International Film Festival, I was privileged to introduce him at that point, and I got to have a nice reunion with Will. And he's just a great guy.
How do you do 7 months? I mean, obviously you can't carry that many supplies.
Good question. They put caches through that down. They flew out in advance and they set food supplies with big long wands to mark each location. And they took a GPS reading so that they could relocate their caches. So it was non-mechanized,
right?
But it was they had food caches clear across the continent. But you're right, they can't carry that much food, and dog food as well. They had to carry food for the dog. And DuPont was again involved in that expedition, and I was privileged to work with him on it.
So let's talk about some of your book. How does someone get sponsored?
Somebody gets sponsored for the trip of their dreams by making that trip bigger than they are. In other words, no one wants to pay for you to go have a nice vacation scuba diving off of Haiti. But if there's a reason behind your trip, like doing more study on the site of the wreck of the Santa Maria, you have a potential to do get sponsorship. But sponsors want to know, what do they get out of it? What do they get in return? If you're looking for $100,000 to cross Antarctica, what's a sponsor going to get from it? That's why you see many explorers, they're dressed with patches with company identification on them. Take the case of Eric Weinmeier. Eric Weinmeier.
By the way, we had Eric on this podcast about 3 weeks ago.
Oh, you did? And he's great. Love that guy. So here's a case of a guy that wants to climb Mount Everest. And if you're a sponsor and you're sitting there with your marketing budget, you go, wait, time out. I think Everest has been climbed. In fact, Everest has been climbed by thousands of people. Why should I want to sponsor you? And Eric would say, well, I want to remind you that I am blind.
Right.
And the sponsor says, you want to climb Everest and you want to be blind? You're blind? You want to climb Everest? Now that starts to make some sense for a sponsor. First of all, it's the first blind athlete to climb, and I use the term athlete, not blind guy, because Eric is an intense athlete. It's the first blind athlete to climb Everest. It says a lot about disability. Maybe you're not disabled that much, and about the drive and the determination to do something extraordinary like that. I mean, and it's not like they dragged him up and spiked him on top of the mountain like a football. No, I mean, he did have to earn himself. He earned his way to the top of Everest. So he gets a sponsor and he puts Allegra on his jacket. Well, he winds up on the cover of Time or possibly Newsweek, one of the two big ones. And there he is on the cover of a national news magazine. And you can clearly read the word Allegra. That's payback for a sponsor. Just like Christopher Columbus said to Queen Isabella, I'll bring you back great riches. Eric Weinmeier says to Allegra, which is a product, I think it's an antihistamine allergy drug. It's a product he actually uses. And he wore the little patch and it got them great exposure.
Well, I love it. It's not just explorers, right? I mean, sports teams, we now realize that this is big business. They even name stadium rights now.
That's right. That's why people do it. That's why sponsors want to be involved in this. There's also the halo effect that exists. You go into a store and you're looking at a Gore-Tex parka. There's a little hang tag on it. And the hang tag will often say, this parka went up Mount Everest. You may never yourself go up Mount Everest, but because that parka went up Mount Everest, there's a halo around that parka. That parka, you may do nothing tougher than walking in the parking lot, of Costco on a snowy day. But you like to know that your parka, if you had to go up Everest, could take you up Everest. And that's the halo effect that companies like. They want to demonstrate product performance in dire conditions. And if it works in dire conditions, it's going to work wherever you take it.
I got it. And you help people. This is the cool part is you help people get sponsored, right?
And I help people, well, through the book and some of the advice I give them, I help people find a sponsorship. For instance, you go to a sponsor and you say, you want to climb Everest, and the sponsor says, what have you climbed before? And you say, well, a couple of mountains in the White Mountains, a couple of 14ers, that might be Pikes Peak, which you drove up. Sponsors want to know that they're not sending you to your death. They want to know that you've got the goods. And so Will Steger, before he went to the North Pole, the sponsor says, well, where else have you been with those dogs of yours? And he said, well, once I went from Duluth to Point Barrow, Alaska by dog sled.
Whoa.
And he came back, and that was pretty impressive. So they knew this guy had the goods.
Tell me about some other exciting explorers that we may not be aware of.
Oh, geez, I guess it'll come up as I'm thinking about it. Paul Schurke was Will Steger's partner in 1986.
Yep.
And Paul decided to do his own expedition. Paul realized that the people who live in northern Alaska, many of them have relatives in the Soviet, at that time, the Soviet Far East.
Oh, wow.
They have relatives across the Bering Strait. And the only thing separating Big Diomede from Little Diomede Islands, the only thing separating Russia and the United States is a 2-mile passage. So Paul said, I'm going to fly to the Soviet Far East on a deer. Is that part of what now Russia? I'm going to fly there and I'm going to take a dog sled expedition back across the Bering Sea to unite the people of Alaska and Russia. And
Wow.
that was, he crossed the ice curtain at that time. And you got to remember 1989, 1990, which was the time of this expedition. There was a warm, friendly feeling between America and Russia. That unfortunately has not lasted, but at that time it was quite an exciting thing, and I got to go with him I got to go with him on the flight to the Soviet Far East. He gets off the plane, and they hand him bread and salt, which God, I was a lot younger then. I was just like thinking to myself, that's what they give people, bread and salt, and that was a ceremonial greeting, and a big loaf of bread with some salt on it. And we had lunch that day in a town hall in Anadyr in Russia, and we sang the Russian anthem and we sang the American anthem, and I had never seen so many vodka bottles on the table at one time, and it was disrespectful not to finish your drinks at lunch. I hardly drink at night, much less at lunch. So there were a lot of headaches the next morning after that trip. But that was
I did not know you went on that. And this is back in what, 1989, 90?
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. So you just described perfectly our trip to Moscow in 1992 on the Blue Angels. You know, we actually went over there as ambassadors of goodwill, and I remember that time frame where it was opening up. The Berlin Wall had come down, countries were changing, and it was such an incredible feeling of openness and sharing. We had the same feeling when we landed. They had that same loaf of bread, but hopefully it wasn't the same loaf, but it was the bread with the salt, and you broke the bread, and the Russian band played the US national anthem. And even though they were off key, it was the most beautiful thing. Yeah, I totally see. And that giving and back and forth. And just like you, I'm absolutely deeply saddened that those relationships have changed so dramatically, because people are people. I'm totally convinced we can get back to those time frames that you got to experience. I never knew that it was only 2 miles. Are you kidding me? There's only 2 miles between Alaska and Russia, the United States?
Between US held, not the mainland,
Right.
US held Little Diomede, and Russian held.
Are those part of the Aleutian chain, the chain of Aleutian Islands?
Bering, well, it's the Bering Strait.
Right.
So it's not as far down as the Aleutians. It's
okay.
It's up north of that if you look on the map. But that's where I learned my only Russian. I learned Minyat Zavut Jeff, Minyat Zavut Jeff, and then we'd drink some more vodka, and we'd slap each other on the backs, and we'd say mir, which I was led to understand meant peace. I know it sounds ironic today with Russia becoming a pariah nation, but back then it was a different time.
What is minutia, whatever you said, Jeff?
Minyat Zavut Jeff. My name is Jeff.
Oh, my name is Jeff.
And I'm probably totally mispronouncing it.
Yeah.
But when I go to a foreign country, I try to learn how to speak like a 2-year-old. My name is.
It's easy for me.
When I go to Iceland, you hate the Jeff, you know, Quaseder Got, what's going on? That's all. The trouble is they think you speak. I can only transmit like a 2-year-old. I can't receive.
Right. Well, you know what I found? How many countries have you traveled to in the world?
I not that many, but it seems like, well, I've been to Iceland 18 times.
18 times?
So, yeah, so that kind of screws up my country count, but 34 countries, and that's not, I mean, that's not.
Isn't it amazing to me? I'm about to go, we're traveling again, you know, not only for work, but Carol and I are going to go to Greece and Italy. And I always try to at least learn something to let them know you're trying to speak or order food in their language. But you know what's amazing is on that Iceland, let's go back to that. You are actually in the Hall of Fame. Leif Erikson, tell me about this award.
Well, yeah, so Iceland is a country of 330,000 people. It has 7 newspapers. It has its own currency. It's like what? If you went to Cincinnati and they had their own money in Cincinnati, that's like what Iceland is. A very literate people, very clean country, the cleanest water you've ever drank out of a fountain. is in Iceland. The cleanest air you'll ever breathe is in Iceland. And there's a tiny little museum in Husavik, which is the Exploration Museum. And the Exploration Museum is in the very northern part of the country. And it's up there because the Apollo astronauts and the Mercury astronauts and Apollo trained there on lava rock that they thought looked like the moon. So you have pictures of Neil Armstrong going to Iceland. There's actually pictures of him fishing while he was up there training. And so in this remote part of Iceland, they were training for the moon. And so Husavik is very proud of that and created a museum. Husavik's also proud that they were the location for the Netflix movie Eurovision about the European Song Contest. And there's a song called Husavik, My Home, which was up for an Academy Award. It didn't win, but it's a beautiful song. Anyway, so that's Husavik. They have a little museum there. I got to meet them. They learned about my background, chronicling the history of exploration. For 27 years, I've written Expedition News. I know this is a lot, but it's my thing. I'm a groupie for explorers. I'm thrilled to meet anybody.
Yeah, I love your stories on that.
I want an award from the museum. That's all. It's not the Hall of Fame. It's just the.
Oh, well, we'll call it the Hall of Fame right now. It's pretty good. Hey, now let's pivot to, because now you've moved to volunteerism, your other book, and it really moves me to see the power that when you've traveled so much, now you realize I need to give back, right? How can we help each other? So tell me about, first off, what's the name of your newest book there?
Thank you for asking. It's like asking the name of my children. So my new, it's called Travel with Purpose. Travel with Purpose. It's published by Rowman and Littlefield. The book came out a couple of years ago, and it's based on the fact that I make a lousy tourist. You can only lie on a beach for so long. Then what are you going to do? You're going to go, you're going to go to Anguilla. And what are you going to do all day? You're going to lie on the beach? Well, okay, that's 2 hours before you just fry your little, you fry your little self. And it's actually not that good for you anyway. You can get vitamin D plenty of other ways. You lie on a beach 2 hours, now what are you going to do? So my thought was, well, maybe while I'm there, I could visit the Humane Society, or I could help out at a Habitat for Humanity, or I can just spend an hour picking up trash along the beach. That's something that's called plogging. Plogging is walking while you pick up trash. It's a very Scandinavian concept.
Wait, I'll make sure I can say it right. Plogging?
Plogging, P-L-O-G-G.
Okay.
I-N-G, plogging.
Oh, I
so
like it.
Then I had the opportunity to go to Antarctica as a chaperone on a student's trip to Antarctica. I did have to pay, but not as much as you could pay, upwards of $15,000 to go on a cruise ship to Antarctica. Didn't pay anywhere near that, but I was a volunteer. There were 84 brilliant high school kids and 20 chaperones on a Russian research vessel. I got to volunteer and go to Antarctica, and I realized, hey, I could be a volunteer and see the world. This is pretty cool. So I write about that in Travel with Purpose, about going to Antarctica on a trip, and it was life-changing, absolutely life-changing.
In what way? In what way?
It is the highest, driest, coldest, windiest continent on Earth. It's as if you were going to Jackson Hole, as if Jackson Hole had a seashore. Imagine the incredible mountain scenery next to the sea, with icebergs, with some incredible wildlife in the Antarctic Peninsula, a sun that didn't set. Well, we weren't below the Antarctic Circle, but the sun was setting like at 12:30 at night, and it's just, the lighting was just absolutely amazing. to see some of the research bases down there. It just is a truly magical place. And here I was as a volunteer. And I thought to myself, wow, I just got to see Antarctica as a volunteer. And then 3 years later, I got to see Nepal as a volunteer. And that was another life-changing experience, particularly because Kathmandu is a city that wants you dead. This is a place, this is a place, you've got cars going every which way. It was polluted. You've got electric wires hanging like spaghetti from every light pole. If you don't look where you're walking, you walk right into a manhole. The dogs have rabies. The monkeys will bite you. That was quite an eye opener, and not to be dismissive about an entire city, but you have to have your wits about you. You had to have situation awareness when you're walking down the street, and don't wear your Rolex when you're in Kathmandu. But I was there to help cure blindness.
Wow.
In Nepal, which is one of the poorest countries on earth, about 28 million people, blindness is a curse, And many of those people are blind because of cataracts. Cataracts is the clouding of the lens of the eye. And no one anywhere needs to be blind due to cataracts. Here in the States, if you get the slightest bit of opacity in the lens of your eye, if it looks like you're looking through a dirty window, which I've got little baby cataracts going on. If it looks like you're looking through a dirty window, Americans, they just run to an ophthalmologist to get a new lens put in their eye. Right. And it's an outpatient procedure. In Nepal, due to the altitude, due to the sunlight, due to the fact that eye protection is not really a thing there, they don't wear sunglasses as much as we do in the States. Due to all those factors, people have cataracts, bilateral mature cataracts in both eyes. And it's like they've got rocks they're trying to see through. Yeah. And they're blinded. They're blinded by it.
What organization did you work with?
I went with Dooley Intermed, intermed.org.
Okay.
And then they had volunteers from New York Eye and Ear Hospital. And we went over there with these rock star ophthalmologists. Yep. They set up an operating room in a classroom, and took these Nepalis who were blind for years, blind for years, and gave them the sight back the next morning when they took their bandage off. And to see the look on their faces, to see them start dancing, to see them fall to their knees, tears rolling down my eyes to see the reaction. A lot of them were very stoic. They would just maybe get a smile out of them, but we had just profoundly changed their life. And in the process, it changed my life to see that. So between Antarctica and Nepal, I said, you can do this. You can be a volunteer. You can see the world. They're not free trips, but you can help others. Even a tiny little bit, you can help others while you see the world. Well, and that prompted me to write, where's that book again?
Travel with Purpose.
To write Travel with Purpose. And since then, I've given talks, particularly on Zoom. I've given 40, 50 book talks already to various groups, to libraries. Got one coming up in Connecticut, which I can do in my pajamas from Boulder. Thanks to Zoom. Well, Zoom is okay, but it's not the same as being in person. As Gucci, you know yourself. Yeah. It's not as much fun. For a speaker, it's more fun to be in front of people.
To connect. It's amazing though, what the connection that can be made with Zoom and audio here too. It's not the same, but it can be very powerful. Hey, let's go back to what you just said, the power of volunteering. So what are some of the benefits that a traveler gets when
Oh my God. Yep. The benefits of travel. So let's say your cruise ship lands in Barbados, and you know how they have these ports, and the minute you get off the boat, you walk through some cheesy t-shirt shops, cheesy trinkets, and things you'll buy, and and never look at again. Well, instead of doing that, you can call a group called Hope Floats. They say to you, well, where's your cruise ship docking? Oh, great. We can use your help at the Humane Society in Barbados. Here's who to call. Here's how to take a cab there. It's only a few minutes cab ride away. We'll call ahead for you, and they'll expect you to help out for 2 hours or 3 hours. You've just become a volunteerist. And then go back on the ship, and then go have your buffet, and then go play your bingo, and then go buy artwork that you don't really need. Then you can go back. But for 2 hours, you've met the locals. You've learned about the best beaches. You've learned about the greatest restaurants. The cruise ship is, going to be there overnight. You can, although cruise passengers usually eat on the ship.
Yeah.
But you've gotten all this local knowledge about the place. Plus, you've got a better understanding of the Humane Society in Barbados. We went to Turks and Caicos. And as a family, we helped out at a turtle nursery. We didn't do much, but still, that was volunteerism. You don't even have to spend any time doing this. If you've got 5 pounds that you can spare in your luggage, another group called Pack for a Purpose, you can see them online, will tell you what to bring to that country, and they'll come and pick it up. In other words, you become like couriers. They need baby aspirin. They need sanitary napkins. They need diapers. And you carry that in your bag, and they'll come pick it up from you. You're a volunteerist. So volunteerism, you set the parameters for that. You can volunteer just bringing items in your luggage. You can volunteer for an hour, 2 hours, a half day. You can go down for a month and become a volunteer. You can join the Peace Corps. It's all up to you.
Well, that's what I think, what you blew me away with your book. And by the way, I've been using it. And I want people to understand that it doesn't have to be the heroic big stuff like you're talking about with eyes. And by the way, there's a lot of people that can help you there too. But it's that little thing that you just mentioned. It's being connected to the local people, whether it's Humane Society or helping at an orphanage. I know that one of the things that I really feel is powerful is when you do that. Carol and I did this in Machu Picchu. Yes, we wanted to climb Machu Picchu, which was great. But on the way back, we spent an afternoon in the valley helping out at an orphanage. And you're right, it's not like we did a lot. Okay, we were there mostly just to give the kids something to do. I played soccer out in the backyard with them, right? But the point is I remember that more than Machu Picchu. I really remember the connection of giving back, and you receive so much when you give. Give me an example of some of the little things that you've done.
That reminds me of the parable of the starfish.
Oh, nice. Yeah, tell us.
Right now, a man's walking down the beach. He sees this little boy, and the beach is littered with starfish. And the man says, "Hey, kid, what are you doing?" And the little child says, "Well, I'm throwing the starfish back." And the man says, "There have got to be 5,000 starfish on this beach. What difference are you making?" And he picks a starfish up and he goes, "Well, it makes a difference to that one," as he throws it. Yes. He picks another one up. "It makes a difference to that one," and he throws it. And that's a parable of the starfish. Just in research for my book, I went to the Habitat for Humanity in Denver, and they have an organization called the Restore. What they do is they take donations, and then they take the donations, they clean them up, and they put them in the front. You go in the back of the store with your donations, and then they clean them up, and they put it in the front of the store, and they sell your donations to the public, and then they raise money for the Habitat for Humanity program, where they build homes for underprivileged.
It's not just in small countries like that. In Sun Valley, we have the exact same thing for the library, the public library. And there is where people, you donate your old stuff. Well, some of it's not all that old. It's, the skis from last year or whatever, but they turn around and they resell it. It is the most profitable. It's the best library you've ever seen because of this, a way of self-sustaining. It's called the gold mine. And,
Well, the gold mine.
yeah, it's the gold mine. It was right where you were staying, close to where you were staying. But this idea of making a difference. Okay, how about Sicily? I'm going to Sicily here in a couple months, and Rome. Do you know of any thing, or how can I find out how I can give back?
Start with Pack for a Purpose.
Okay, Pack for a Purpose.
I think it's packforapurpose.org or com. Okay. And they'll tell you what to put in your bag.
Okay.
Right. And then you may want to be in touch with, well, again, Habitat for Humanity, see what they have. Many of these countries have humane societies.
Yeah.
They certainly have Red Crosses that are there. You could just as easily just Google Sicily volunteer program, or the name of the city, Syracusa. Is that on Is that?
Yeah, Sicily? It is. In fact, we're gonna visit there. So
Syracusa.
Yeah, Syracuse. It's not Syracuse, it's Syracuse.
Syracuse. I always wanted to visit because I went to Syracuse, which is probably named after Syracusa. But anyway,
yes.
If you put Syracuse, Sicily volunteer,
great advice. And that's why I'm hoping people are listening is the internet now has made this so powerful. Your book, though, also has a bunch of examples of places you can go, and they do make it easy on you, and I think for me, that's the difference is, hey, I can do this even just for a couple of hours.
Just a couple of hours. That's all we're asking, just at a minimum, just take, and it's a great experience to do that. Now, remember, like here in the Florida Keys, they have the Florida Wild Bird Center. When you volunteer, they don't let you near the birds. It's not like you get to walk around like a pirate with a parrot on your shoulder. That's not what it's about. You show up there and say, can I clean cages? And they say, that you can do. You go up there and you say, can I hose down the walkway? That you can do. You go up there and you say, can I feed some of your pretty birds? No, you're not going to be able to do that. They don't know you. That you need to be trained for that. But also remember that there's a dark side to volunteerism. I would be remiss. You say you want to help out at an orphanage. Well, you really have to vet these programs carefully, because in Nepal, there's a book called Little Princes by Connor Grennan, who talks about the dark side of volunteerism, particularly in Nepal. These shady businessmen will go up to the countryside and they say to the families, I will take your child to the big city. I will feed your child. I will clothe your child. I will educate your child. But that child will live in my orphanage. And the parent says, okay, well, he's probably going to have a better life living in the big city in the orphanage. They get to the orphanage and the children are just clothed enough, just fed enough, just clean enough, because when the tourists come, these businesses want to encourage the children to suck up to the tourists and get lots of money in donations for the charity. So the orphanages are run as for-profit businesses.
Wow.
So you have to be careful. And then these kids are like, they're like little actors. Oh, we're going to have some visitors next week. We want you to be on your best behavior so the visitors will donate more money. And that's what.
So I'm sure that there's bad examples like that. But what are some of the good examples? I'm glad you brought that up, because that is, to be aware, right? But I mean, give me some good examples besides the cataracts, which was awesome. A good friend of ours, Jeff Tabin, does the Himalayan Cataract Project. And so like you, I've actually been there and watched people take those bandages off. And it's amazing what you see. Your heart opens up, right?
Heart opens up.
I mean, you said tears coming down your eyes, right? Amazing
like
stuff.
Well, remember that you don't need a passport to be a volunteerist. You can just as easily go on volunteermatch.org. It's the match.com of volunteer programs. You could go on volunteermatch.org, and they have thousands of volunteer opportunities across America. You may think that Las Vegas
Brilliant.
is this rich city. Well, once you get off the strip, there's incredible poverty
Yeah.
in Las Vegas. Every city's got homeless.
Yeah.
Every city's got poverty. But in Vegas, you've got so much wealth on the strip and so much abject poverty off the strip. And there's a group called 3 Square, which is a food bank. They need 100 volunteers a day. You can
Wow.
sign up, and hardly any skill is required. You're putting apples in a bag. So I went down there and I volunteered, and I met those folks. It's called 3 Square. So
Beautiful.
even in American cities that you visit to, what they do is they get conventions coming to Vegas.
Yes.
And as a side trip,
Yes.
the conventions will go help out at 3 Squares for the day. And they've got pictures all up along the wall of beauty pageants that come, and they volunteer down there because they're packing food for schools.
Yes.
There's so much food insecurity in Vegas, and not to pick on Vegas. There's food insecurity across America.
Yeah.
And
You know what I like, what you're saying is that, because a lot of the events I go to, the conferences, they do wrap in some sort of giving back. It's building bikes for kids. You actually get to see the kids get the bikes, or like you said, packing lunches for school kids. A lot of times writing letters to people overseas, the armed services or something like that. There's so many beautiful things. Give me a couple, as we wrap this up. I just want to think about some real takeaways of wisdom that you live your life by. Okay, some sayings, some wisdom, something that you have lived your life by.
Well, certain things I do every day, and I tell my kids this: you got to be buttoned up. Where's your cell phone? Where's your keys? Put the keys in the same spot every night. Get yourself buttoned up. Don't forget your ski poles at the mountain. Don't forget your boots. You got everything. Where's your passport? Is it in your front pocket? When you travel, particularly, you just got to be buttoned up. Just button up. Be aware of where your stuff is. And I learned this from a polar explorer, Will Steger. He said, my knife is always in the same pocket every day.
Yes.
My rations, my pemmican is always in the other pocket. My flashlight's always in the same spot. When you get there, you can't be searching around for these things. So be buttoned up before you go to bed every night. Make a plan for yourself for the next day. When are you going to get up? What's the plan for tomorrow? Set your cell phone alarm. Throughout the day, I had my cell phone alarm set today. 2 o'clock, I know we're going to have this call. It goes off. I didn't forget it. I didn't even need the cell phone, but that one time that you forget, to just be aware of what's going on and be buttoned up, because you don't want to leave your iPad at TSA. Don't leave TSA without knowing where everything is. Wallets, watch, spectacles. And there's one more, but
well, I love that's for a traveler like myself, and for you who've traveled a lot. It's really great wisdom for lots of people. And typically you get busy, right? The time you forget something is when things happen and you rush. So having these habits and being smart about where you keep your passport, where you keep your ID safe, right, is absolutely.
Well, and safety's the key. You're gonna be no help to your family or as a volunteer if you get sick. So if you're in Baja, Mexico, and you see a fish taco stand, maybe that's not a good place for you to have a fish taco. Maybe that's not a good idea. Fast food. It's like, what's the least harmful fast food that you can possibly order in a fast food restaurant? How about an English muffin with butter and not all the other crap that you have? Just figure out the least damage to your system when you have to eat in a gas station. Take a gas station, for instance. No, I mean, I walk into these places on I-70. and they go, what can I eat that's going to be just the least damage to me? You know, and the little hot dogs on the roller
Oh,
things,
geez, no way.
it's
Yeah.
just, I'm just going to learn to regret it.
Okay.
You don't have to succumb to that.
No, absolutely. You know, being healthy and safe, so critical. But what is glad to be here? I always love to hear what it means to you. Jeff, you've had so many amazing exploring experiences. I'm really profoundly impacted by your commitment to volunteerism, and not just volunteering, but actually making it part of your travels, you know, travel with purpose. What does glad to be here mean to you?
Healthy, be healthy. Life is so precious, incredibly precious. And if you don't have your health, you don't have, you really don't have anything. It's glad to be here. It's glad to wake up in the morning and it's another day and you're alive, which is why, you know, suicide, particularly teenage suicide, is such a tragedy. It's like the older you get, the more you realize how precious life is, and the more you can do just to eat healthy, to exercise and stay active makes you glad to be here. And that's what it is to me. I mean, there are a lot of definitions of glad to be here, but that it is to me. It's another day. I'm here. I'm on 2 feet. I'm upright. And I feel fine.
Yeah. Every day is precious. Every day is magical. You know, as I'm leaving, I'm thinking about you looking at the Northern Lights and experiencing that joy, but not taking it for granted, right? Same thing with our health. Every single day, appreciating this. Jeff, thanks for being
Yeah,
part
you
of the High
bet.
Performance Zone, man. And everybody, that book on volunteerism, that's the one. And getting sponsored on your dreams, Jeff's the guy. Jeff, thank you,
Thank
man.
you.
Glad to be here.
Good. Bye.